Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Teaching Towards Tomorrow. My name is Jenny Magera, and I am the blog author and host of Teaching Towards Tomorrow. And in this series, we're highlighting amazing educators around the world who are doing fabulous things for teachers and students. And today, I am so thrilled to be joined by an awesome educator all the way from just outside of Auckland, New Zealand, the principal of Taupaki School, Stephen Lethbridge. Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great, thanks. How are you going?
Good. It is November, and so last time I saw you, you had a little bit less facial hair, right?
Yeah, the Movember has hit New Zealand very, very hard, and I'm trying to rock the Magnum PI look, but I don't think it's working.
I think you're nailing it. It's really good. Are there a lot of teachers and families at your school who you've seen take on the facial hair challenge?
No, I'm the only one here, much to my children's embarrassment. But we do have a Twitter hashtag team, EdChatNZMo.
Oh,
So there is a whole Twitter hashtag of about 5 people, because it
really?
seems like New Zealand males aren't allowed to grow facial hair.
Really? That's so funny. NZ, wait, it's NZ Ed, wait, say it again?
EdChatNZ.
Uh-huh.
So that's our national Twitter education chat that happens pretty much every Thursday, and then we just threw a mo on the end of it just to spice it up a little bit.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. All right, we're gonna have to all check that out. But turning back to you and your school, I just wanted to quickly share with folks who are tuning in where Taupaki is, where it is, what grades you serve. So if you don't mind, just let us know, where are you? So you are, I remember traveling there from Auckland City, and it didn't take too long. It would take forever to get from Chicago, as you can see. Here we are in Chicago, there you guys are on the North Island. But as
Yeah.
we zoom in, if you could just let us know a little bit more about your school and
Cool.
what you guys do.
Okay, so we are what we call in New Zealand a full primary school. So that means that we start children when they enter school at 5 years old in year 1, and we move to year 8, which are 13-year-olds. So the next move that children make from us is off to a high school. We are quite a high socioeconomic area of the country. We are in our Prime Minister's local electorate, so we serve a very conservative, traditional community who are very into strong academic success and have some very, very clear mental models about what effective schools should be. So, that's been a bit of a journey for us as we try to grapple with 21st century learning. We have around 284 students as of today, but that ranges from 250 all the way up to 300. But we also have an attached technology centre where other schools come to us to do things like hard materials technology or soft materials or food technology. And we're also then emerging into trying to renovate those into more future-focused thinking by including things like robotics, Arduino, electronic textiles, rapid prototyping, and those sorts of things that you saw when you were out here.
Yeah, perfect segue. So speaking of which, while I was out there and getting to learn about your school and the kids that you were talking about, I took some photographs. And so what I'd love to do, Stephen, if it's okay with you, is do a quick show and tell with the folks who are watching to hear some of the stories and inspiration that I saw. I mean, I left your school completely mind blown. I thought I had seen student agency before. We do Genius Hour and 20% time around here, but the difference between what we do here and what I saw at your school is student agency is siloed here. It's very much like, here's the day we're going to let our kids go wild, or here's the period or center. everywhere I went in your school, from big to little, all of your kids were really engaged in their own voice and their own empowerment, and that's what I'd really love to share with folks here.
Sure. I mean, that's a big thing for us. It all stems from formative practice. Really, oh, there's the sheep. Yes.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So there we go. Right. So we'll start with the sheep. So this is the view from right outside of your school, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's a bit of paradise, really. So right over those hills, just over the hills that you see right there in the distance, is West Auckland, which is one of the most multicultural, diverse communities in New Zealand. So we are about 7 minutes away from diversity, yet we are in this area a very monocultural school in terms of our ethnic makeup.
And with that being said, though, I remember at your school, and is this true? I don't know if this is true of all New Zealand schools or just yours. I saw a lot of signs that were dual language. It was both Maori, which is your local native population, right, and English. And I saw kids were learning Maori, right?
It's very important for us. I mean, and for us, our native language, the Māori language, is what binds us together. Whenever a Kiwi travels overseas, all you have to do is perform a haka and you'll find Kiwis coming out of everywhere. So the one thing that binds us as we travel and disperse around the world is what makes New Zealand unique, which is our Māori culture. And even though most people do not speak the native language, we really, as a system and as an education system, encourage it and mandate that it needs to be done in schools, which is fantastic. So we have bilingual signs, we have all that stuff around the place, and just making sure that we honour our heritage that we have in the country.
I love that. I think we need to do a better job in the U.S. of that. So speaking of your signs, I remember I walked on campus with Nat Torkington of Hopera, and we were wandering around, and you had a lovely campus with lots of, as you said, bilingual signs and beautiful artwork. I loved the outside spaces, and then we got to go into a classroom. The teacher's name, everyone kept calling her JJ, but what's her full name?
So to us, she's JJ. But to her kids, she's Miss Purton-Jones.
So Miss Purton-Jones was doing something pretty interesting. So she had these groups, these individualized learning plans, or ILPs, and she kind of talked us through it. Do you want to kind of tell us about the origin story or how this is going for you guys?
Well, look, so we started a long journey. We revisioned the school about 7 years ago, and we made, and one of the things that came out from that vision was the importance of assessment for learning practices, where the locus of control is firmly with the student. The student knows what they can do, what they need to do next, and then they know how they're going by the feedback that's generated. So, that's a cornerstone of what we do. So in the early years, we really worked hard on locus of control with students, and that meant things like student-led conferencing right from 5 years old. So what you see here is probably the result of about 4 or 5, 6 years of students heading into our year 7 and 8 area who are used to talking about and having control over their own learning and what they're doing, because in previous years leading up to that, that's what they've been doing in their class. They talk about their learning regularly. They get feedback from their peers, from their teachers, from their parents. So the basic nutshell of this is, here are some things that we have to do this week, we must do, and here are some things that are optional. Build that in with some adventure learning time on a Monday, and you guys develop your own learning timetable. And that looks like the teacher suggesting, or the teacher putting up times when JJ is available, when Miss Purton-Jones is available for teaching clinics and certain things. So what that then does is it starts to develop the self-regulation in students that they have to opt into these sessions. Now, you can imagine that in a conservative community that's very much used to 19th century education, because these parents all had education done to them and they turned out successful, so why shouldn't we do education to our kids exactly the same way? You can imagine that that causes a bit of a dissonance in mental models around what school should be like. The perception could be that the teacher is not teaching, or the teacher is not, it doesn't have a handle on things. The reality is that if you're running a classroom with this sort of focus and this sort of student-centered timetabling, the teacher is working her tail off to keep up with what's going. So if there's a teaching clinic that's going on the floor that Miss Purton-Jones has said you need to schedule some time if you are deficient in this area or you want to have some attention in this area, remember to book into this teaching clinic. If she notices that there are children that are not coming to that teaching clinic who need to be there because she has such a great handle on the data, she will then sidle up to them and go, don't you think you really need to be in this clinic? Because what did your data tell you? So she can use that as a data coaching teaching point to say, or to remind children, well, this is what your data said, so these are the outcomes from what you need to do in order to progress forward. I really should be at that teaching clinic.
I love that, and I also love how she really used the students to scaffold their own use of this tool. So I think I have here, let's see, I do, some photos. This is from one of our students. It was interesting how she uses binders, and I love how you guys have this attitude of technology when it really enhances the learning or transforms it, but you don't have to. I could see someone saying, oh, well, why is this on paper? Why using a physical binder? Why don't you just have the kids do it in Google Drive? But I mean, this works just as well, and putting it in a digital drive really doesn't transform it that much. So JJ kind of talked through her process of why it is analog, but what I love about it being analog too is you can see the problem solving this kid had. So she talked to me about this must-do and optional list and how the kids had the blank little squares where they could write in, you know, that's where they had free time to write in their must-do and optionals. But I like this color coding too, how she told me about, I think she said the green was I got it, or I felt confident. The orange was not, or the yellow was not so much, and the orange was like, oof, this was not my best effort, or I had a hard time. Is that right?
Yeah. So you know, and that's the big point of that, is that it doesn't have to be digital, but I would suggest that there are some kids in there that would be doing this digitally as well, and that's, again, that's an example of agency. You know, we have a bring your own browser program at school, so it doesn't matter what you have. If you have something, as long as you can connect to the internet, or it connects to the internet, you can bring whatever you want. So that's why we call it bring your own browser rather than bring your own device. So we have a range of tools that come forward, and analog is definitely a valuable tool. The preference is probably moving forward. We do need to be looking at these things digitally, but as our children are moving in, the teachers adapt to what they can and can't do when they come into their classrooms and make allowances accordingly. So I know that my son, who's in this class, so I have one of my twins in Miss Purton-Jones's class, he prefers to do this digitally. He uses Google Docs, Google Drive, and he has a similar color coding system that he uses, but he finds that he can then reflect better when he's working on his iPad. So yeah.
So he creates the same system, but he does this. So you can see this kid's using crayon. Here, this kid was using a highlighter. So your son does the same process, but with Google Docs. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and he just likes it that way. And you know, we're at a stage now where we are, as of right now, we are probably making the full-on switch to moving totally to Google with all of our apps and our school domain names. So we're doing that as we speak. So I'm pretty impressed that I can still have a hangout while we're doing that. So. That's what it's about. It doesn't matter what the tool is, because we have a firm belief that technology, that effective teachers use the technology of the day to help cause learning.
And I think that I really saw this. This was another thing, was that the focus was definitely on the learning, not the technology. I loved these sentence stems I saw in JJ's classroom of "I'm proud of myself. I took responsibility for my own learning." That's a huge one for us. You know, something that challenged my thinking. Do you know how she uses these sentence stems?
Yeah, so they would be, you know, too often is one mistake that we often make as educators is we build in reflection time into our lessons. Now that might sound strange, reflection time and a mistake. What can happen is with kids is that you say, right, that's the end of our lesson, time to reflect. Some kids don't want to reflect at the end of a lesson, and I had this conversation with a child. We have a managed learning, a learning management system that we still have here at school, and it's all password protected. That's why at the start, when you saw that rather budget website that you put up, we really don't use the website for anything from general information. So we have a whole back end where we use something called KnowledgeNet, which is getting a bit archaic, and perhaps we might move to Google Classroom as an alternative. Children are regularly uploading comments, learning samples, uploading reflections. And when I was talking with a child, she said to me, well, I commented, well, you don't have many reflections, you don't have a lot of reflections. Well, no, I really like to sit down with my learning journal, and I like to sit there on a Sunday with my laptop on my lap at home and really reflect on my last week and then make some plans for the next week about how I'm going to move forward. So those question stems that JJ uses, they're there for whenever children need to or want to use them. So there's no set, right, everyone stop, now, think about what you've just done. You know, we do have that further down the school because we, you know, if you're going to be a reflective learner, you need to have scaffolded steps that get you up to a self-regulating position. But we don't necessarily she wouldn't necessarily stop the class and say, right, everyone now reflect and do this. They're constantly doing that as part of what they're doing in their everyday learning.
I love that, and that's something that was remarkable at your school, is that, again, this kind of great critical thinking and student empowerment wasn't siloed. Like, every time is reflection time, every time is, you know, you're the boss of your own destiny. I also love the story you told me, going back to, you said your kids start leading their learning conferences from a young age, is about how students were collecting data using the tools they had at school, about a student saying, hey, could you come over here and videotape me? Can you tell that?
Yeah, so student-led conferencing is a really, really important part of our school. So it looks like I've got movers next door at the moment, so there might be a bit of background noise coming in. So right from 5 years old, the student, so traditional parent-teacher interviews, we're not really into one-on-ones with the teacher. The student will lead their learning journey with their parent, and we found that you know, that 6 families in a room doing a student-led conference at the same time replicates the buzz and the noise of a busy classroom. So therefore, kids don't listen into other people's conversations. They're really focused on their own conversation, and no one can hear what anyone else is saying because there's a buzz and a hum. And they step through their data right from 5. Well, I'm reading at yellow level, Mum, and this means that I can. So what I'm really working on with my group and my reading at the moment, I'm working on this. So at home, I need to focus on this part of my reading, and this is what I'm doing at school. And here are some of the games that I'm playing at school that help me with this. And here's my favorite book. And then they move off to mathematics, or they move off to big picture learning, or technology. So that starts right from 5. But children gather evidence of that all the time. So I walked into a classroom where one child he had his iPod, and he said, okay, he was handing it to another student and said, can you just video this reading conference that we're doing? Because I have a goal that I want to focus on how I'm actually understanding what's going on and how I'm interacting with questions, and I just want to analyze what's going on. So he then took that video data, uploaded it to his learning management page, looked at it, and then reflected on his performance and set some more goals. So they're doing that all the time. You'll find, when we talked about teachers running clinics, one of the kids said, "But I know how to do that." And so the teachers say, "Well, you take a clinic." So when the students start taking clinics, they then say, "Can you video me taking a clinic? Because I want to get better at my teaching." So they then share the video data, reflect online, and make next steps. And they have some amazing conversations with each other and coach each other around their own particular teaching.
Gosh, this is brilliant. I love this. I think after I came back and heard you tell us about that, that's something that we're going to start thinking about doing in our schools, are these student-led conferences. And I also love how you said that it scaffolds from the young age. So, you mentioned adventure learning, and I think that a lot of folks see some things like this happening during Genius Hour or 20% time in their schools. There's marvelous ways, I see you mixing, again, the analog with the digital with QR codes. I loved how JJ said, kids decide when they put their QR codes up. When they feel like something's worth sharing, that's when they put it up, versus here's your project. When you're done, you are now commanded to put it up on the internet. So I loved that. I loved, her gamifying her reading challenges, turning, exploring genres into a Monopoly game. But what I really loved was the openness of the classroom. Everywhere I walked, it was a little bit messy, and I say messy in the most positive way possible. Like messy as in like, this wasn't the bin to put the hot glue guns in. They were just out, and when kids needed them, they went over there. I loved how kids were just on their laptops and iPads. These guys were showing me about how they created a stadium through Minecraft, and instead of showing me a PowerPoint or a Google presentation, their presentation was just walking me through their stadium in Minecraft, which was incredible. I also love how some of these kids, they're building the boats, but what I loved was they talked about building this garden, but in the pictures, like some of the kids aren't wearing shoes. You can see there's materials everywhere. This just isn't the way we often see learning in the U.S. and around our schools, and what I noticed was, I think some of our teachers would come in and say, like, "Oh, well, this seems messy," or "It seemed like this boy in the background, you can see he's not wearing shoes. This might lead."
Oh, look, bare feet, and hardly any of us wear shoes out in New Zealand.
Gosh, I love it. And so, but the thing is like, no matter what, if you talk to every single student, every single group I went in, they were not just a little bit engaged. They were 1,000% invested, not just engaged, invested in what they were doing, and they were thrilled with what they were doing. They were so proud of their work. So I guess my question is as you developed all of this freedom and these very organic, beautifully messy spaces, how did you get your kids so bought into this process? Because every kid seemed so bought in.
I think we asked them. We allow them to pursue what they would like to pursue, and then we frame things to fit the curriculum around that. So an example of the adventure learning is a day of just pursuing something that you would like to pursue. But that can be seen as an abdication of responsibility on the school's part. Why would you just let my child choose what they want to pursue and learn? But what I see is when Miss Purton-Jones was doing that in her classroom, I had a knock on my office door and a couple of Year 7 students said, "Mr. L, can we have 30 New Zealand curriculum frameworks, please?" Now, these are the documents that our curriculum is based on. No, 30? I don't think I've got 30 because all the individual teachers have their own. We don't have a set of 30. What do you need them for? And they said, "Well, we've got our passion projects, our adventure learning projects, but we need to tie them back to achievement objectives in our curriculum so that we can prove to other people that we're not mucking around just having fun, we're actually learning." So I managed to collect all of the curriculum documents from all of the teachers, put them in the class, and then ordered a class set of curricula so that they can actually just pour through them and plan what they're doing and map out their own things. I mean, there's some of John Hattie's work is a bit contentious at the moment. There's a few blog posts running around about the reliability and validity of a few things. But one of his strongest points is students having control and direction and self-selecting about where they're going next. His biggest effect size is students writing their own reports. Because they're very honest and accurate. So, you know, these are the things that feed into the back of this whole approach where we're allowing children to take control of their learning, because that naturally engenders engagement. Everyone's engaged. They might be at different levels in that curriculum, but they're all engaged. And engagement is a huge thing in making sure that they're progressing to their next learning step.
I love that. And you know, coming out of the choosing, there was a specific project that you told me about that was this package-free lunch, and you had I remember when you told me the story, the thing that was most salient was the failure aspect, and how you just you never stop your kids from failing. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so package-free lunch. So, you know, one of the projects was, look, New Zealand kids are fantastic around sustainability and environmental education. They absolutely jump on board any project that keeps rubbish, or, you know, whether it's sustainability in a garden setting or anything like that. We're very keen about maintaining natural environment. So a group of children had grouped together because they wanted an adventure learning project, because they were worried about the packaging, lots of throwaway stuff. It was blowing out of our rubbish bins, and then causing the school to look untidy. They didn't want an untidy looking school, but they also wanted a better environment. So they came up with the idea that every Wednesday, in order to promote how much rubbish we use, or how much litter is in our lunches, let's actually have a package-free lunch. So you have to come to school with no packaging. Now, it was a great idea. And I, as a principal, could see the pitfalls in this, because I thought that it's not our kids that are going to be driving this. It's parents at home who are sending lunch to school with the kids. They are the ones that need targeting. So I had in the back of my mind that it's not going to be that successful, because busy parents just get things, throw them in a lunchbox, send them off to school. But they ran with this and they ran with it, and then they came to the conclusion that it hadn't really had that much of an impact on the litter problem around the school. And then a simple prompt was, so what next? And we generated and brainstormed some ideas, and they came up with the idea, well, how about we take rubbish bins away? Let's not have any rubbish bins at school. So right now we're in the middle of a trial of no rubbish bins outside. And what happens is all children take their lunch away with them, take their rubbish away with them. So what we're trying to do is use real life contexts for the problem solving, the fail forward approach that we have to get together and learn from each other. We have this belief that if you're not scratching your head, or if you're not confused, if you're not in the learning pit, then you're not learning. If you get everything right and you make no mistakes, then it's a pointless waste of time, you being at school. Everyone needs to be in that confusion challenge state where we're making mistakes, and that's one of the biggest things that we're trying to get across to our kids right from 5 years old.
I love that, and you know, I think that oftentimes with teachers, when we see kids doing projects like this, we want them so badly to succeed that we try and steer them where we're like, oh, and we think we're scaffolding and guiding questions, but I love how it was just hands off. Like, you knew from the beginning, like, ooh, this isn't going to work, but you're like, let's just see what they do about it. And the solution they came up with was kind of brilliant. So we don't have a ton of time left, but I just wanted to move on to leadership. So, you know, we kind of heard how your teachers are really taking the reins of this. how your students are so empowered, but there's a lot obviously that comes from a leader like yourself to make this work. And so one of the things, and I'm going to show some photos from another one of your teachers' classrooms, which I would love at some point to be able to talk, maybe we'll have a part 2 to talk about her classroom.
Mm.
But amazing story about how you hired this teacher. Do you want to, maybe first could we talk a little bit about what soft materials are, because we don't have soft materials in the United States.
Okay, so soft materials in New Zealand is teaching, it has traditionally in the past, you know, prior to around 1995, has been pretty much teaching kids how to sew and use sewing machines. And it was part of something that we called manual training, which was around at years 7 and 8, at 10, 11, 12, 13, we started to introduce kids to woodwork, metalwork, sewing, cooking, and all of those type of hands-on practical things. So, so we have a technology centre that caters for other schools for that. But with the advent of maker culture and all things makerness, which is my big pet passion, that standardized everyone sitting around doing the same thing and producing the same product doesn't fit. So at the start of the year, we had an opportunity, well, towards the end of last year, we had an opportunity come up in our tech centre. And on Twitter, I had been followed by a student teacher, a teacher studying at university who was trained to be a teacher. So she followed me on Twitter. I did the polite thing and followed back, read her blog, and she was studying to be an art teacher. And this Kimberly Bars here. So her Twitter handle is @MrsArtech. And she was writing about what she was doing, and I thought, this is fantastic. So I sent her a direct message and said, okay, do you like coding? And she said, yes. And then I said, do you like rapid prototyping and 3D printing? Can you do that? Yes. Do you like to make things? Do you like to hack? Do you like to pull things apart? Do you like Arduinos? And she said yes to all these things. So then I DM'd her a final message, which was, do you want a job? And I think her response was, is there a job where I get to do things like that? And that's when we found that she wasn't going to be an art teacher. She was going to be a teacher who gets to share with kids what she does in her everyday life and help them develop a maker culture. So what she's got is a wonderful environment, and honestly, that is a whole other 30 minutes to talk about what she's up to there.
I know, that's why we're gonna have to do this again on another day to talk about this. There's so many other things I want to talk about. I want to talk about your Arduinos. I want to talk about the teacher who came to or the scientist who came. And unfortunately, we don't have a ton of time left, so we'll have to schedule another one. But the last thing I wanted to talk about, or one of the last things, is your interview style. One of the things that was so striking to me, one of the many infinite things, was how when I was walking around the school, not only were your students so passionate about learning, but all of the teachers, even the ones who self-proclaimed that they were technophobic, were really passionate about thinking out of the box and working with kids, and were really bought in, even if they weren't like a Google maven or an iPad maven. And so I remember I asked you, how did you curate such a fabulous staff? And you told me this really interesting thing. Do you remember about a square on a piece of paper? And I don't remember exactly what it is, but if you could share that, that would be so amazing.
So whenever we hire teachers in the application pack, we align our application pack to our school vision. And so everything that goes in the vision is... and the vision isn't mine as a principal. That's one thing that's out there, is none of this is my vision. I had no say in the vision at all. I just asked questions. And it's an amazing strategy to use. My job as the principal is to make sure people's feet are held to the fire of what they want to create in the school. So we have a community-generated vision of where they want to be. So we make sure that vision is aligned throughout the whole of our system. If it doesn't relate to the vision, we're not going to do it. We will just avoid it because that's a waste of time. So in order to get people, we started that visioning process, but of course you have staff turnover. So how do you align people without bringing them in and indoctrinating them? Because when I have this belief that when you bring people into the school, you want the school to be more like them rather than them becoming a clone of some of what the school is like, because diversity is really important. The one thing in our vision that it talks about is that we use creativity. So therefore, in our application pack, we have a box, and it's just a flat 2D box on a piece of paper that says, this is your space, be creative. And it's half an A4 page, and people use it creatively. So we've had people design big fold-out 3D sculptures that tell us about themselves. We have people who say, I'm not very creative, but here's a poem about me. We have people who draw. We have people who, Kim in her application, she crocheted a teacup and saucer that stuck out of her page. It was about this big. And then the simple line underneath it was, seriously, this job is just my cup of tea. You know, how can you not want to interview people that put that much effort and time into an application?
Oh, wow.
We've had website addresses. We've had DVDs back when DVDs were around that you turned to. But now we're seeing a proliferation of just websites or online things with links to videos. It's that sort of stuff, and that highlights for me as a leader people who are not in this profession just to pay the mortgage. That highlights people who are passionate and care about what they do. And I think when they get here, they find a home where other people are passionate and energetic and care. And they might be very different with their skill sets, but the one uniting force that we have is our passion and care and concern with a kid-centered, student-first attitude. And that's the big thing. We always take it back to that. Whatever happens, is it going to have an impact on students? And what's the impact? Do we have a school uniform? No. Does that impact on learning? No. So should we have one? No. Do we have 5 meetings, one meeting after do we have meetings after meetings after meetings? No, because in our vision it says our teachers lead balanced lives so that children can feed upon their effervescence. So we have a meeting when we have to have one. If it can be done by email, let's do it by email. But let's spend time chatting, talking with each other, informal things, getting together in groups and learning from each other. That's the stuff that makes a difference and keeps people energetic and enthusiastic. But it's hard work, and we are stressed sometimes.
Oh my gosh, I'm like tearing up over here. That's amazing. And Stephen, I could talk to you all day long. I'm not kidding. We're gonna have to do a part 2 of this conversation because I know that I was beyond inspired, and for those of you who are watching, this is this is a tiny percentage. If you ever are in New Zealand, go storm the school. They'll probably hate me for this because they'll have a million people knocking on their doors, but it's definitely one of the most inspiring spaces to go see true student agency and powerful, passionate educators. So, Stephen, thank you so much for sharing a few of your many amazing stories at Taupaki. Hopefully we can get you over the giant pond over to the U.S. so that you could talk with some of our educators face to face sometime soon.
I hope to be there next year. I think Nat's working on something, so fingers crossed.
Yes, perfect. Well, happy rest of November to you, and for everyone who's watching, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? Should they find you on Twitter?
Twitter is best, so that's at Stephen with a PH _ TPK. Yep, Twitter is pretty much, yeah. Don't do email that well.
So we'll put your Twitter handle and link it right in the blog
Great.
post so folks can find it. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and have a lovely rest of your day.